I'm Professor Greg Clark, Professor of City Leadership and Urban Innovation at University College London, and I'm an advisor to the Brookings Institution and the Urban Land Institute and the OECD. And I've visited about 200 cities, and I'm really delighted to be here in Berlin for the first installment of the Urban Persuasion seminars. Yeah, well, as a person, I've visited Berlin, I guess, 40 or 50 times. I love Berlin. I'm one of those people who loves to come here because of this amazing historical city with all of the things it's been associated with, and yet this new funky lifestyle coupled with this rather wonderful sort of civility makes it very attractive. And so I've got two overriding feelings about Berlin. One, I'm really happy and pleased that Berlin is succeeding again, growing again, and becoming the innovative and inventive city that everybody knows it is once again. And I think that Berlin has an opportunity to really be a leader and to make the most of that, and of course it's doing that. And that is to be applauded and celebrated and enjoyed. The other thing that I'm preoccupied with, though, is a kind of constraint, and I would put it as simple as this. What's Berlin's appetite for its own future? In order for Berlin to optimize the opportunities it now faces in the innovation economy, in population attraction, institutional development, as a center for higher education, creativity, technology, and many other things, it would really need to grow its population base in order to do that. And that would mean a willingness to build more houses, build more railway lines, densify the land uses, increase and change the skyline to a certain extent, accommodate more growth within the same space, making that growth good, clean, inclusive, and productive space. And it's not clear to me whether Berlin at the moment is enjoying a temporary wave of fame as a great new city of technology and startup, or whether Berlin has committed itself to becoming one of the great global cities of the world once again. So the question of appetite for me remains a question mark. Yes, I would see Berlin as a global city, but it belongs in a kind of special subcategory of re-globalizing cities, because Berlin has been, of course, a global city in the past, a huge cultural, industrial, technological, educational, scientific city over many centuries. And where we find ourselves today is that Berlin fits rather well with another group of cities that I would think of as Vienna and Amsterdam and a few others, which are cities that find themselves facing the new cycle of globalization, when a lot of the global integration in the economy is being driven by sectors that are impacted by new technologies. So unlike the last cycle, where London and New York and Hong Kong and Singapore and Paris were seen as the global cities because they were financial and business and professional service centers and media centers, the new cycle is very much about the adoption of advanced technologies into industries that are globalizing. And my third group of global cities, the new global cities, are smaller cities, below 5 million people, very high quality of life, usually very well managed cities, great connectivity, usually with access to fantastic natural environment. And those cities are able to specialize in these industries that are disrupted by these new technologies. And Berlin, I think, fits perfectly into that category. It just so happens it also has a history which it brings to bear, which gives it culture, credibility, authenticity, and a different kind of identity. So Berlin is a new global city. So when we looked back at the cities in the past that had developed roles beyond their natural borders or their natural domestic markets, we discovered 5 things were very important. The first thing was that the impulse to trade led to an investment in connectivity. And if we look at Berlin today, we can say that digital connectivity is very good. Aviation connectivity is improving. Obviously, a new airport is on the way. That will be important when it comes. The rail connectivity is good. And Berlin's diplomatic connectivity, its soft power, is increasing all of the time. The second thing we observed is this strong drive for innovation, the need to invent new products and new activities. And of course, Berlin is a hub of innovation today. The third thing is that the innovation and the trade and the connectivity attract new populations. The city becomes open. Merchants, migrants, workers, thinkers, all kinds of people from all over the world. And this is a deep part of Berlin's history and its DNA. And you can see the reemergence of this DNA today as Berlin becomes a more open city. But I think there's a question mark about what Berlin's appetite is and how open it really wants to be. How much population growth does it really want to accommodate? The fourth thing is that because of innovation, these cities become influential. They start to set the rules by which other things happen. And of course, Berlin, as the capital of Germany, is a very influential city, and it's increasingly influential in technology and culture and creativity. And then lastly, these global cities tend to be very good at making the most of geopolitical opportunity. In moments of change, they tend to find how to use those moments of change to acquire new activities or to find new opportunities. And Berlin has obviously been good at that throughout its history. There's no reason to presuppose it won't be good at that again. Clearly, as the current situation in Europe regarding both national politics, migration, the future shape of the European Union, the future growth of the European economy, the shift of the European economy towards a knowledge-based economy, Berlin has lots of opportunities in all of those big changes to become once again a very important decision-making centre and influential centre within Europe. Well, one of the reasons that I'm really enthusiastic about Berlin is actually an industrial reason. When you look around the world and you see the extent of global urbanization, the people moving to cities we know about, but the businesses moving back to cities, the institutions moving into cities, this creates a huge opportunity to do urbanization better than we've ever done it before, and to do it at a scale which is absolutely unrivaled in history. One of the consequences of this is that there is now huge demand for what I would call advanced urban services or advanced urban technologies around the world. And to my mind, the building, the management, the maintenance of cities is itself now a global industry in which particular cities are able to specialize in just the same way that cities can specialize in digital industries or fashion and film. Cities can specialize in being great places to make, build and manage cities. And what's so exciting, therefore, about the Berlin TXL project is that, of course, this is the first city in the world to build a science park, a technology park, totally dedicated to urban solutions and urban technologies. So through this initiative, not only will we see an industrial development extravaganza as more companies devoted to these urban technologies succeed here in Berlin, but also we see Berlin take its rightful place as a city which is therefore branded, identified as one of the great global leaders in city making, city building and city management worldwide. Well, when you're asked to write a book about global cities, you face a stark choice. You can either go back to the emergence of a global city theory, originally in the early part of the 20th century, and then more substantially from about 1960 onwards with Peter Hall and then Saskia Sassen and Peter Taylor and many others. Or you can say, well, I'm interested in what makes cities internationalize and what makes them want to trade and have influence beyond their borders. In which case you have to go back about 4,500 years. And I decided to do the latter because what I wanted to discover was really the DNA of global cities. What is it that makes a city or a group of cities want to extend their influence, their trade, their activities beyond their natural domestic area. And if you look at that issue, you uncover, I think, some very interesting observations about globalizing cities and lessons that are as useful today as perhaps they were 4,000 years ago. Yes, I think there are lots of issues in here. So firstly, I'd say competition is a necessary feature of the life of cities today, but it's not only competition. Collaboration is pretty important. Working systematically with other cities, forming alliances with other cities is key. And those of us who are interested in cities are more interested in how all cities can get better than we are in how one city can beat another in a competition. But the competition not just for capital, but also for talent, for knowledge, for investors, and also for particular kinds of institutions is really critical. And in order to compete, cities do need to adopt some of the habits and disciplines of business. They do need to be concerned about benchmarking and branding and have a competitive mindset and think about incentives. They do need to organize around a strategy to play to their strengths. But cities have more to do than be competitive. They also have to be livable places for citizens. They have to contribute to the global environment. And in that respect, they often behave in ways that are not like businesses. So it's the ability of a city to be competitive where it needs to be, but also to be sustainable, livable, and responsive where it needs to be that's so critical. I am preoccupied with the losers in the winner and loser conversation, and that's why I'm very interested in how we develop systems of cities, cooperations between competitive places and other places around them, so that they can broaden the space over which the benefits are felt. Well, I'd say that there are two basic challenges right now. The first challenge, of course, is that we're living in a period of great political change, where the growth of skepticism, the growth of populism, and the growth of a kind of anti-globalism, anti-metropolitanism is very much around and is very felt in all of the activities that are happening currently within national elections, national political forces. The thing is that I think that the realpolitik of all of this is that these are debates that, in a sense, have been around for a while, and the politics, it seems to me, doesn't really go very strongly with either the demographics, the economics, or the technological trends. I think economics, population moves, technology moves point towards increased globalization, increased metropolitanization, increased concentrations, and I think that after a while this political movement will have to become more informed by those trends. The second thing, of course, then, is the developments that need to happen, particularly within nation states, where the global cities need to partner much more effectively with the other places within their nations and form alliances which enable the nation states to be more effective in supporting the competitiveness and development of all of their territories. Some of those will be competitive global cities. Others of them will need to be highly livable, highly sustainable, highly resilient, other kinds of places. So this calls for a very different approach from national governments in the future, and national governments are only partially on their way there.